My name is Sophia Lane, and I'm 33 years old. I live in a peaceful neighborhood just outside a small city called Fairbridge. My days are simple. Every morning, I make a hot cup of black coffee, listen to the local news on the radio, and walk a block and a half to my workplace, a cozy office tucked between an old bakery and a bookstore. I work as a co-founder of a digital health research company, a position most people don't fully understand. It's not the kind of job you explain in one sentence. My team and I work on developing tools that help hospitals manage patient care more effectively. But to my family, it might as well be a made-up job. They've never really asked what I do, never shown much interest. Growing up, I was always the quiet, practical one. I didn't wear flashy clothes or makeup. I didn't gossip or spend hours in front of mirrors. I was always in front of a screen, typing, thinking, building. My older sister, Hannah, on the other hand, was everything I wasn't: graceful, elegant, effortlessly charming. She's 3 years older than me, and in my parents' eyes, she was perfection. Every holiday, the compliments would fly toward her like she was the only daughter in the room. "Hannah, you look so stunning in that dress," or "Hannah's boyfriend is a dentist, so impressive." And me? If I was even acknowledged, it was with a polite, "Sophia's doing something in computers, I think." To them, I was always the background character, bland, cold, and unapproachable. They didn't know I once stayed at work till 2 a.m. finalizing a deal that brought in nearly $1.8 million in funding. They didn't know I co-created something that could change lives. But I held on to hope. I believed that if I worked hard enough, really hard, maybe one day, I'd earn their pride, their respect. Maybe, finally, I'd be seen. But that illusion shattered on a chilly day in late March. It was a Friday afternoon, and the air smelled like the start of spring. Damp soil, thawing grass, a hint of rain on the horizon. I had just wrapped up a funding call with a venture partner from Atlanta. We'd secured a new round of support for our next big project, and I decided I'd take a rare 3-day weekend to fly home to Maplewood, where my parents still lived. I'd always helped prepare for my mom's birthday, a tradition I held on to even after moving out almost a decade ago. I never expected much in return. Just maybe a warm welcome. I picked up my phone and dialed. My dad answered, his voice neutral, almost too neutral. "Hey, Dad," I said cheerfully. "I'm thinking of flying in early to help with Mom's birthday. I've cleared my weekend. Want me to pick up anything or help prep?" There was a pause. Longer than usual. Then a throat clear. "Sophia, if possible, don't come home this year." I blinked. At first, I thought maybe he was worried I was too busy. "It's okay," I said quickly. "I've already made arrangements. I want to be there." His tone changed, firmer. "It's not that." Then came the reason I'll never forget. "Hannah's bringing her new boyfriend. He's a senior executive. Confident, educated, easy to talk to. Your job is, well, it's complicated. And frankly, we don't want you being compared again. It makes things uncomfortable." That word. Uncomfortable. I stared at the phone like it had burned my palm. "Wait," I said slowly. "Are you saying I shouldn't come because I make the family look bad?" Silence. Then, clear as day, he replied, "If you insist on showing up, then don't call me your father." And just like that, he hung up. No pause. No hesitation. Just silence. My apartment suddenly felt too big. Too still. The espresso cup in my hand had gone cold. I couldn't move. Couldn't speak. Couldn't believe what I'd just heard. Not from a stranger, but from my own father. I sat there for a long time. Not crying. Just stunned. The words kept echoing in my head. "Don't call me your father." I always knew I was the quieter one, the less presentable sister. But to be told not to come home because of that? Because I didn't fit some polished version of what they wanted the world to see? It broke something in me. Something that had held on for far too long. I stood up, walked over to my desk, and opened my laptop. Without thinking twice, I logged into my bank account. For over 2 years, I had been sending money to my parents every month, nearly $5,800, sometimes more, depending on what they needed. Electric bills, water, internet, car repairs, even cable. all paid by me. They never asked if I was okay. Never wondered if the startup was tight on cash. They just said, Hannah's still catching up from her last job switch. If you can help, it would mean a lot. And I helped. Quietly. Dutifully. Like it was expected of me. I stared at the payment history. $14,460. That was the total I had sent them in 2 years. I hovered over each one. Electricity, water, internet. And then, without any hesitation, I began canceling them one by one. Auto payment canceled. No alarm, no question from the app. Just a silent confirmation. Kind of like how I had existed in that family, quietly, without acknowledgement, until they needed something. I closed the laptop. The next few days passed in a strange kind of calm. I didn't reach out. I didn't ask for an apology. On the day of my mom's birthday, I stayed home. I made peppermint tea, sat on the balcony, and just let it be. That evening, at exactly 5:07 p.m., my phone buzzed. First it was a message from my mom. Sophia, why is the power out? Can you check with the provider? I didn't answer. Then came another. No water or internet either. Call the company. Your mom's really upset. Still no greeting. Still no, are you okay? Just problems. That I was supposed to fix. And then, of course, came the text from Hannah. The internet's down. We have guests. Mom's crying. What is going on? I picked up the phone and started typing. 3 weeks ago, Dad told me not to come home. That if I did, I shouldn't call him my father. I'm just doing what he asked. If this is inconvenient, maybe find someone you're not ashamed of. I stared at it. And then I deleted the message. Not because I was unsure of what I felt, but because I knew they'd never understand it anyway. That night, I turned my phone face down and didn't check it again. I sat in my favorite armchair by the window, legs curled under me, the same way I had so many evenings before. Except this time, I felt different. Not angry. Not sad. Just done. A few hours later, my voicemail pinged. It was from Hannah. You've really crossed the line, Sophia. Mom's been crying since last night. Yesterday was important. Liam met the whole family, and you ruined it. You're so selfish. I listened to her words play out like a bad radio drama. Her voice was sharp, her tone full of accusation, but I wasn't surprised. In her world, everything had always revolved around her being the centerpiece. And I was just the scaffolding behind it. I didn't reply. Instead, I opened my work email to catch up on anything urgent. One message stood out in my inbox. New transfer request, Liam Prescott, from Fairbridge branch to HQ. I clicked on it. And there it was, Hannah's boyfriend's name. The same Liam she had paraded around at the birthday party I was told to stay away from. But this email had his current job title, Head of Financial Operations, Fairbridge office. And the new destination? Boston HQ. My department. Under Transfer Approved By was my name, Sophia Lane, co-founder. I stared at it for a moment, blinking in disbelief. Then I let out a small, quiet laugh. Not because it was funny, but because fate, it seemed, had its own twisted sense of humor. The man they didn't want me to embarrass them in front of? He was about to report directly to me. And no one in my family even knew I co-founded the company. They assumed I did something with computers, never once bothering to ask what or how far I had come. I had spent years building this from the ground up. Countless sleepless nights. Failed prototypes. Pitched ideas. Grit and patience. And now, the one they had chosen to replace me at the family table was about to walk into my office. I didn't need revenge. The universe had already set the stage. The next morning was quiet, the kind of stillness you only get before something big is about to happen. I arrived at the office a little earlier than usual, dressed simply in a navy blouse and slacks, sipping from a tall cup of black coffee. At 9:32 a.m., my assistant knocked on the glass door of my office. "He's here," she said softly. I nodded. A few minutes later, Liam Prescott stepped inside. He wore a sharp gray suit and carried a folder under one arm. His eyes scanned the room casually, but when they landed on me, they stopped. A flash of recognition flickered across his face, then shock, then disbelief. "Sophia?" he asked, unsure. I gave him a calm, professional smile. "Welcome to Genexa Technologies, Liam. I'll be reviewing the financial reports this week. I'm looking forward to seeing your analysis." He stood frozen, lips slightly parted, trying to match the version of me he thought he knew, the quiet, forgettable younger sister of his girlfriend, with the woman sitting confidently across from him now. I slid the onboarding folder across the table toward him. "Let me know if you have any questions." He took it with a quiet "thank you" and turned to leave. But before he stepped out, he paused, glancing back like he wanted to say something. Then he left in silence. I leaned back in my chair, took a slow breath, and stared out the window. No smugness, no satisfaction, just a strange sense of stillness. The truth had spoken, loudly, and not through me, but through circumstance. For years, I had been invisible to them. Now, the very person they tried to impress by excluding me was the one who just learned who I really was, with no confrontation, no speeches, no drama. Only reality.
And it was enough.
The morning of my mother's birthday, the sky over Boston Heights was dull and overcast. A layer of fog hugged the streets, casting everything in a hazy stillness. I sat by the window in my apartment, cradling a fresh mug of dark roast, watching the trees sway. I had no plans to call, no gifts, no social posts. Not out of anger, but because I refused to pretend anymore. At exactly 9:02 a.m., my phone buzzed.
"Mom."
"Sophia, honey, I think the power's out.
"Can you look into it?"
Today's an important day." I stared at the message, unreadable. No apology. No acknowledgement of what my father had said. Just expectations.
As if I still owed them my time.
At 9:15 a.m., another ping.
"Dad."
"Water's not running. No internet either. Call the providers and sort it out." There it was. No greeting. No checking in. Just more commands. I didn't even reply. They didn't know I had canceled all payments weeks ago. They didn't know I had followed through, not out of spite, but because I was finally done being treated like the family assistant with a bank account. And on the very day Hannah had planned her grand introduction of Liam to the family, no electricity, no water, no internet. At 11:07 a.m., the flood started.
"Mom."
"Please, Sophia, I'm begging. The guests are arriving. At least help this once."
"Dad."
"We can't cook. We can't do anything. Where are you? Take care of this." "Hannah, seriously, today is important. Mom is sobbing. No internet. I can't even order food. Why are you doing this?" I leaned back in my chair, let my now cold coffee sit untouched, and just watched the screen go dark. I didn't feel triumphant. I didn't feel guilty either. I just felt free. And then came a name I hadn't expected to see on my screen. Aunt Marie. A video call. The only one who ever texted me on holidays, even if I never replied. I hesitated, then answered. Her tired face appeared, dimly lit by a flashlight. "Sophia," she said gently, "the house is a mess. Everyone's panicking. Your mom's in tears. What's going on?" I didn't speak right away. Then I said evenly, "Dad told me not to come. He said if I insisted, I shouldn't call him my father anymore." She looked stunned. In the background, I could hear chaos, my mother's voice saying, "She's sulking. That's all. She wouldn't actually let this happen." And then a sharper voice, "Hannah, Liam's almost here. The house is dark. No one called the power company. I can't believe she did this to us today." I smiled faintly, the kind of smile that comes after too many years of silence. Suddenly, Aunt Marie turned the phone. A new face filled the screen. Liam, in a crisp suit, holding his blazer in one hand. His eyes locked on mine. "Sophia," he said. But this time, it wasn't a question. It was recognition. Then he turned to the room and said, clear and calm, "She's my direct supervisor at Genexa. She runs the department. I report to her." Silence. My sister's jaw dropped. My parents went still. I nodded. Hope your introduction goes well today, I said softly. Then I ended the call. And just like that, the illusion shattered, without a single word of argument. After I ended the call, I didn't move. Outside, the fog was starting to lift, and a pale streak of sunlight broke through the clouds. It hit the edge of my window, warm but distant. My apartment was quiet, comfortably so. No shouting, no tension, no expectations. Just stillness. A few hours later, my phone buzzed again. This time, it was a long message from Hannah. It was messy, a mix of outrage, guilt, and desperation. You knew all along, didn't you? You let it happen. You sat there and watched everything fall apart while Liam exposed you in front of everyone. Mom's still crying. Dad's furious. Liam's confused. Don't you think that was cruel? I read the message, but didn't open it right away. Instead, I made a cup of ginger tea and sat by the window again, letting the scent calm me. For once, I wasn't overwhelmed by emotion. No racing heart. No clenched jaw. Just peace. After 10 minutes, I opened the message again, then calmly typed my reply. You say I was cruel, but I was just at home. I didn't call myself his boss. I didn't even know he was coming to your party. And I didn't tell Dad to disown me for your sake. If one truth ruined everything, maybe it wasn't built on anything solid in the first place. I hit send and set the phone down. I wasn't looking for a reply. I didn't need one. About half an hour later, I got another message. This one from my mother. I never expected you to choose this way to get back at the family. I stared at her words, then slowly leaned back in my chair. Get back at the family? That's what they thought this was? To them, it wasn't years of quiet pain. Not the countless bills. Not the cold shoulders. Not the rejection.
It was a scheme, a strategy.
As if I had orchestrated the power outage, the discomfort, the awkward silences, all to teach them a lesson. But I hadn't done anything. I just stopped doing everything. And that, apparently, was enough to crumble the carefully curated image they had built. Later that night, around 10 p.m., I received an email. It was from Liam. Subject, apology and goodbye. Sophia. I didn't sleep much after what happened today. I keep thinking it was probably wrong for things to unfold in front of so many people. But at the same time, I feel strangely clear. I'm not ashamed that you're Hannah's sister. I'm ashamed I didn't see through things sooner. I can't stay in a relationship where respect doesn't exist. As of today, I've ended things with Hannah. Thank you for staying silent. And thank you for the kind of leadership you showed today, quiet, strong, and honest. Liam. I read the message twice, letting it settle. I wasn't happy that Hannah had been dumped. I wasn't gloating, but something felt right. For the first time, someone had seen it clearly. Not just the drama, not just the chaos, but the pattern. The one I had been trapped in for years. The one I had endured in silence, labeled as cold or too sensitive when I didn't smile through it. I wrote back simply, Liam, you don't need to apologize. Everyone chooses how they want to see others. Don't worry, family issues never cross into work for me. But I do hope you now understand this. Sometimes silence is the loudest strength of all. Sophia. I hit send, closed my laptop, and placed my phone screen down on the table. Tomorrow, the world would go on as usual. Meetings, reports, planning the next product release. But I was different now. Not because anything had changed in them, but because I had finally changed how I responded to them. They no longer got access to me by default. They had to earn it. The next morning was calm. I walked into the office like I did every Monday, coffee in hand, shoulders back, thoughts clear. I had meetings to prepare for and numbers to review. I didn't expect any drama. But just before lunch, another message came in.
Hannah.
I know you're busy, but could you talk to Liam for me? He's misunderstanding everything. I didn't respond. 5 minutes later. You're his boss. You have influence. If you say something, maybe he'll reconsider. I walked over to the window, looked out at the busy street, and thought about how many years I had waited for a message like this. Not this content, of course, but any sign that she'd ever seen me. Really seen me. as a person, as a sister, as more than a support beam for her spotlight. And now that everything had crumbled, I was the one she turned to. Not to say sorry, but to fix it. I returned to my desk and typed. Liam didn't leave because of anything I said. He left because of who you are. And maybe for the first time he saw it. There was no reply for a while. Then, an hour later, another message popped up. You're right, but I don't want to lose him. I'll change. Please, just this once. I didn't reply. Not out of anger, but because I was past explaining what should have been obvious years ago. That evening, as I stepped out of the building, the wind was cool, the sky streaked with orange and lavender. I walked slowly to the parking lot. No rush, no weight on my shoulders. Maybe for the first time in my adult life, I felt light. I hadn't raised my voice. I hadn't plotted revenge. All I did was step out of the shadows and let the truth stand on its own. And it was enough. A week passed. It was a quiet Sunday afternoon, and for once, I had sworn off my laptop. I was stretched out on the couch with a book I'd started 3 times and never finished, a cup of herbal tea beside me. Then the doorbell rang. I wasn't expecting anyone. I almost ignored it, but something told me to look. I peeked through the peephole and froze. My parents were standing outside. My mother held a small tote bag. Her face looked tired, older somehow. My father stood stiffly, arms crossed, eyes darting up to the doorbell camera. I opened the door, but said nothing. Hi, honey, my mom said softly. Her voice was hoarse, as if she hadn't spoken much, or had cried too much. Can we come in and talk for a bit? I stepped aside silently. No hugs. No greetings. Just the 3 of us walking into my home like we didn't know how to be in the same room anymore. I poured them each a glass of water and sat across the coffee table. My mother's eyes scanned the room. Neat, quiet, impersonal. Like I had built it deliberately without their touch in it. My dad spoke first. About your mother's birthday, he began, then stopped. I said some things I shouldn't have. I didn't answer. He shifted, uncomfortable. Maybe we've been a little hard on you. Claire's been a mess since the breakup. Your mom hasn't slept well. We thought it was time to sit down, talk like a family again. Still, I said nothing. Just gave a small nod. My mother set the tote bag down on the table and pulled out a folded document. Well, she said, glancing at my dad, we actually wanted to ask something. She unfolded the paper. You're doing well now. Your job's stable. You're successful. So, if possible, we were hoping you could contribute. Just something small. $2,000 a month. It would really help with living costs, retirement, insurance. I looked up at her. $2,000 per month. Before I could speak, my father jumped in. It's not that much, considering your position. We're family, Sophia. I leaned forward, calm and clear. What about Hannah? My mother glanced down. She's not in a great place. The breakup's been hard. Work isn't stable. We didn't want to pressure her. I let out a quiet, breathy laugh. Not bitter. Just tired. She was never to be pressured. I was always the one expected to carry things because I could. I looked directly at them. If she agrees to contribute half, $1,000, and you sign a written contract that says when you both pass, all assets, including the house, come to me, I'll consider it. Silence. My father's brows furrowed. His face turned red. You're giving your own parents conditions, he said sharply. I didn't blink. Not conditions. Boundaries. I've already spent over $14,000 on this family, without a single thank you. If I'm going to continue, it will be on my terms. My mother looked over at him, unsure. Maybe we should think about it. But he shot up from his seat and slammed his hand on the table, hard enough to make the glasses rattle. We raised you for over 20 years, and now you demand contracts like we're strangers. I stayed seated, eyes steady. Dad, I said quietly, raising me wasn't a transaction. But if you're asking me to keep giving without boundaries, maybe that's what it's become. He stood there, breathing hard, jaw tight. My mom tugged at his sleeve. Let's go. I walked them to the door. No hugs. No goodbyes. When the door closed behind them, The silence that followed was warm. That chapter had ended. And I had written the final line. After that day, I didn't hear from them again. No calls. No texts. No apologies. Not even one of those vague messages my mother used to send, pretending everything was fine. But I wasn't surprised. Because people who are used to control don't know how to respond when it's taken away, especially by someone they thought would always say yes. I moved on. My mornings were filled with strong coffee, team meetings, and focus. Our company, Genexa, had started gaining recognition. We were finalizing a deal with a major hospital network. Investors were calling. New interns were applying. And through it all, I kept going, not because I had something to prove, but because I was finally doing it for me. The guilt was gone. I no longer carried the weight of being the one who could handle it. No more bills sent silently. No more pretending I wasn't hurt just because it made others more comfortable. One afternoon, Liam came into our weekly meeting. He handed me the latest financial summary, his tone respectful, his presence professional. We never once spoke of Hannah. I appreciated that. He didn't avoid the topic out of shame. He just knew it no longer mattered here. Some things, when fully understood, don't need to be spoken aloud. That evening, as I walked out into a light drizzle, I stopped by a small cafe I used to frequent during the early days of the company. I picked the seat by the window. On the wall was a wooden sign I'd never really noticed before.
Home is not always a place.
Sometimes it's a decision. I smiled, because I had made that decision. I had chosen peace. There was a time I believed love meant enduring.
Staying. Giving.
Even when it hurt. But the truth? If love only exists while you're paying the bills or fixing the messes. If being a daughter means being convenient, invisible, or quiet, that's not love. That's an arrangement. And I was done. Now I chose boundaries. I chose self-respect. I chose not to be a fallback plan for people who only remembered me when they needed something. I didn't hate them.
But I no longer needed them to see me.
Because I had seen myself, clearly, finally. If someone were to ask me now, Sophia, do you regret cutting them off? I'd say, I regret waiting so long to realize I deserved better. And if someone else, somewhere out there, feels unseen in their own family, I hope they read this and realize they're not alone. If this story moved you, or made you think differently about family, boundaries, and self-worth, we would love to hear your thoughts. Please like the video, share your perspective in the comments, and subscribe to the channel for more powerful, real-life inspired stories. Your voice matters, and your story might be the light someone else needs to find their own strength. Thank you for watching.